Welcome to the talk show. It's my pleasure to have Nick Rhodes here, the blonde bombshell of the pop world. Almost 50 years ago, Duran Duran hit the stage, transforming music, transforming our idea of what a pop star looks like, what the sound is, that infectious sense of dance, of music. We've seen 100 million record sales, we've seen 50 singles released, we've seen number ones in America, in the UK. We've seen an absolute dominance of the way style and substance merge into one of the most glamorous figures in rock. Nick, welcome.
Well, thank you, Geordie. I couldn't have written that better myself.
You're in the middle of a tour now.
We sort of always in the middle of a tour. We tend not to do really lengthy tours anymore where you're just away for months and months and months on end. So we just do a month. Then we come home for a month or two. Then we do another month. So yeah, we have another leg coming up in October all over Europe, but quite a few dates in the UK.
And is it very different from all those years later? What the band, the glue, the camaraderie?
Surprisingly, I think the DNA that we had right at the beginning is still intact and remains pretty unchanged. Of course, our lives changed a lot. We have a lot more kids around us now, and some grandkids. And you look for different things in life, but our focus has always been the band when we're together. So whenever we're in the studio and we all plug in, something magical happens. Not always immediately, but after a while, something happens. The chemistry works. And when we play live shows, that's where everybody's very comfortable on stage. And so that really hasn't changed much at all.
Has it changed in the sense that you want to reinvent? You're the imaginative, creative, ever-questing mind. I always see you as the detail man, but also the person who wants to be stimulated.
Yes, I hope so. I always look for something that's going to inspire me. And I found a lot of that material from other people's genius, from artists, from writers, from movie makers, and from other musicians, by just looking at what they're doing. But ultimately, you've got to carve out your own pathway and make your own unique.
But many artists, they change, or like Bob Dylan, does not want to play the classics. And when you go and hear a Bob Dylan concert, it's almost unrecognizable to what you hope it's going to be from 1966 or 76.
Right.
When one goes to a Duran Duran concert, it is the classics.
We like to strike a balance that I think the audience wants. There's a lot of artists out there who think of themselves as being uncompromising and we're only going to play our new material. And I've seen people do that, and I've been disappointed because I thought, well, you could have at least played a few songs and mixed it in so that people got to hear what they loved about you as an artist. And that's why they came here. So we balance. We put a few new songs in, a few surprises, and of course, plenty of hits.
Now, there must have been a few surprises aged 10, 11, when suddenly you saw David Bowie and suddenly makeup, eyeliner came into your parents would have seen that at school. There would have been a few eyebrows raised. What was it about
Eyelashes.
Tell me, what was that young boy like? What did he wear? Did he go blonde then?
No, not till then. I think I was about 15 when I first changed my hair color. I can't remember what was first. Maybe purple, dark plum. But seeing David Bowie on Top of the Pops is often cited by musicians particularly, and many other people who just love David Bowie, as being sort of a seismic moment in pop history. And I think it was. There was something about it with him and Mick Ronson hugging each other and him singing about Starman, outer space. It wasn't another dull love song. And the way they looked, was
But
extraordinary.
it was the invention of sort of gender fluid. Was that
I
something
think
which?
that was probably part of it, but it wasn't something that we all realised so much at that time. It was glam rock, so there was a lot of that around. There was a lot of other bands that we loved, Roxy Music, Cockney Rebel, Sparks. There was interesting music around during that time, but it's that one moment with David Bowie that struck everybody. And I remember first when I was a kid, I wanted to be a magician. And then I wanted to be an astronaut in about 1969, I would imagine. And then by the time I saw David Bowie, I wanted to be a musician. And actually those three things, magician, astronaut, musician, sort of stick with me somehow in whatever I think about, because it's the exploration, it's the creating an illusion and a beautiful magic trick that mystifies people, and it's music.
Do you think there you were in Hollywood, not the Californian Hollywood, Hollywood in
Birmingham.
In Birmingham.
Yep.
And we now have a chancellor from Birmingham, proud Brummie.
Yes,
Do you
noticed.
still feel that sense of, and what is it about Birmingham?
I love Birmingham. I love the people there. They're down to earth, friendly, a slightly awkward accent at times, but people didn't understand us at first. When we went to America and we all had thicker Birmingham accents then, people just weren't getting what we were saying at all. So somehow, without deliberately doing it, I think it's slowly washed away. But there's a charm about people from Birmingham that I've always loved. But I love Birmingham, of course we do. It was great to us, and we play there very often. In fact, we've got a date coming up there in October again. First time we played there in a couple of years.
And is that a bit of a heart-beating moment?
Well, it's great. It was the fastest selling of all the shows. What does that tell you? It's nice to go home for that.
Yeah, I bet it is. You're unusual in that you're a star on the pop rock music scene who doesn't sing and who doesn't.
No, nobody wants to hear that.
Can you sing?
Well, a little, yes. I mean, of course, I can hear tones and pitches properly, but I don't. I think to be a lead vocalist, you need to have something really special. That's how we knew with Simon. We'd been through several vocalists, some of whom were pretty decent, but when he walked in and he just sung a note, I thought, right, that's it. He's the one, because he was so distinctive. If you look at the male rock voices, the ones that have really stayed with us, David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Freddie Mercury, they're all so unique and distinctive. And Simon had that.
But you had a confidence about the direction which Duran Duran was going to go. Early on, you were almost plotting the big moments when you were really fairly unknown. And tell us about that confidence and that vision which you had that it was going to be fine. More than fine, it was going to be incredible.
Well, I think naivety is probably the best explanation.
Optimism, I'd say.
Well, yes, we certainly had ambition and optimism, but the naivety of never ever thinking that something could fail. There was no plan B. We just set out to do what we wanted to do, which was to form a band, make records, end up on Top of the Pops, tour around the world, play big venues, and enjoy life, experience different things, entertain people, and do something we loved. And somehow the plan worked. We never thought of failure. And I think that's very easy when you're that age, because I was 16, John was 18 when we were starting the band. I'd just left school, much to my parents' horror. I think they would have liked me to perhaps stay and become a lawyer or a doctor.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I said, I don't know. I don't think I need any more qualifications because there's nothing on the curriculum that says rock star. So I'll let me try this. They said, okay, all right, darling, you've got a year. I was thinking, a year? That seems like forever when you're 16 years old. And so I pedaled as fast as I could. And after about a year, we sort of got towards our final lineup, but we were making progress. And they said, all right, another year, and that's it. Then you go back to school.
But when, because you're a reader, you're hungry for knowledge or
Yeah.
curious for finding new film, photography, books,
Yeah,
all
of course.
sorts of things. So wasn't there a curiosity at that stage to keep going with A-levels, university, or it just was overridden by music?
No, I felt like I had enough academic achievements already. I got quite a lot of O-levels, I guess they were then. What am I going to do with them? By the time I was 16, I wanted to get out. And my education, my further education, became meeting people, traveling around the world, exploring different things. As you said, I actively pursued culture and tried to find the things that I like and the artists that I like, the filmmakers that I like. And that's very nourishing to me. I love seeing things, hearing things, looking at things, reading things when somebody's got a new perspective and a different way of doing things.
There were points in this amazing trajectory when things didn't seem as if they were going to go completely right. You had a band member who suddenly disappeared.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What were some of the difficulties and challenges and things you had to overcome?
Well, I think if you have a long career, inevitably, it's going to be a roller coaster ride, and sometimes you're up, and sometimes you are further down.
But the ups are more obvious to see. What were the downs? It doesn't. They
A
don't
lot
seem
of
very
things.
visible.
Well, a lot of things. I think the lowest point for us was probably the mid to late 90s when we lost our third and final tailor. John departed, which I think Oscar Wilde would have thought was rather careless of us. But that then, for a band that had three unrelated tailors, to not have one left, it felt as though we'd lost our authenticity. And John was a very big part of the band. Obviously, he still is now. But at that time, we felt, I don't know without even pinpointing exactly what it was, but we felt we'd lost part of our personality, our charisma, our ability to work as a unit together. And Simon and I carried on with our guitarist Warren at the time, who was an extraordinary musician. We made two more albums, one called Medazzalan, which John was also on, and then another one called Pop Trash. And when we finished that record, Simon had looked at me one day and he just said, "I don't think we can carry on like this." And I looked at him and said, "Yeah, you're right." And that's when the idea was floated to do a complete reunion with all three tailors, which we did manage to get back. And that lasted for another 5 years. And that was a real high. So we went from the lowest point pretty much straight back up to the top of the mountain.
Who did you learn from? What were things that were on the way? Or
I think
said?
a lot. I spent quite a bit of time in the 80s hanging out with David Bowie, who was my superhero. He was on my wall when I was a kid, and then he became a dear friend. And I liked David very much because he wasn't a letdown. He was intellectual. He was funny as hell. And he also would give advice if he thought something, felt something. He'd ask me for advice about things because at different points in your career, we knew exactly what was going on and what was new and what sounded right and who the engineers were and what kind of lighting to use and all those sort of things that perhaps he'd moved on from that. So he was very happy to find out what things were. And I wanted to know, how did that work? How was it? What was it when you did this show? And how did you do that? So it was a fun time, a relationship to have. Mick Jagger was around a lot at that time. Everybody who knows Mick knows that he's got a big personality. We laughed a lot together.
Any advice he give you, anything? Or?
But yes. Actually, Mick said to me, probably when we were just sort of split in half in 1985, Arcadia and Power Station, we'd done these two separate projects. And he looked at me and he said, you really do need to stick together. That is your future. And I guess he was really right, because it could have all fallen apart at that time, and it was easy for him to see because they'd already way past that part of their career. And they're still around now.
Amazing, isn't it?
Incredible.
Yeah. No. The other person who was took a huge shine to you and who was influential in your life was Andy Warhol. I mean, he was absolutely intrigued by these.
Well, we were intrigued by him too. We asked. When I first went to New York, we had a rather wonderful PR lady called Doreen D'Agostino, who we quickly renamed Doreen. And she said, "Okay, guys, what do you want to do when you come to New York?" I said, "Well, go up the Empire State Building and meet Andy Warhol."
I'm going to remind you what Warhol said.
Cool.
I wanted to see Duran Duran at the Savoy because their videotape is so good. It's called Girls on Film. This from the author of classic underground movies like Chelsea Girls. When I got there, the first band was still on. Duran Duran, good-looking kids like Maxwell Caulfield from Greece too. And then afterwards, they wanted to meet me. So we went backstage and I told them how great they were. They all wore lots of makeup, but they had their girlfriends with them from England, pretty girls. So I guess they're all straight. But it was hard to believe. We went to Studio 54 and we had some fun.
There you go.
How much
been a good day.
How much of an influence was he? What was he like?
Well, when I was growing up and I was trying to find my way through interesting moments in pop culture, I was interested in art history, in cinema particularly. Warhol was one of the key figures, and the Factory in the 1960s, the Velvet Underground, whose legendary first album is such a magnificent record now still. And Andy seemed to be at the center of everything that was modern, new, forward-thinking, different types of people all mixing together, which we were attracted to. There's lots of other artists I liked, but Andy was really the one that I thought was at the pinnacle. And so meeting him, I didn't think for a minute we'd meet him. We were just sort of young kids from Birmingham who happened to end up in New York, staring up at the skyscrapers in absolute awe and amazement. And the next minute we're at Andy's factory. Oh, there's Bridget. Well, that must be Fred Hughes, all the people I'd seen in photos or read about in From A to B and Back Again.
And with you were then very established when
when we met him, we weren't at all established. Actually, that would have been 1981. And we were just starting out.
Yeah,
we hadn't broken in America.
No, but you were in America as a group, and it was sort of the first stages of there. How would you define what your music brought and changed to people listening?
Oh goodness, I think that's for other people to decide. But for sure, I can tell you what we put into the formula that made the music, which was everything that we knew and loved at that point. So it would have been glam rock, very much David Bowie and Roxy music, Cockney Rebel. And then after glam rock, there was punk rock, which was the fuse that really lit the whole thing on fire, because it's the first time we realized you don't have to be a virtuoso musician. You actually have to have a great attitude, a great look, and be able to play some things. And that fire that punk rock brought into Britain and around the world, but here was the center of it, was absolutely critical to the beginnings of our band. And then after that, it sort of was going alongside the advent of disco, which was more in America, but we rather liked disco, as well as liking punk rock, which was an unusual combination because most people hated one or the other. We liked both. And I loved electronic music, Kraftwerk, Giorgio Moroder. The song I Feel Love was that he did with Donna Summer was incredibly influential on the way I thought about things, because that to me was the future of music. So between all of that, and then lots of other songwriters, specific things, Simon loved Patti Smith, Jim Morrison, The Doors, sort of mix it all together. I think the badge of honor that you had to have at that time period was to be unique. You needed your own sound. You're talking about a time when there were some amazing acts around, coming out of punk and goth. Yeah. You had The Cure and Susie and the Banshees, and then you had newer bands coming along like In Excess, and you had Madonna and Prince a little further along into the 80s. Every single one of these acts, the Smiths here in the UK, everybody had their own sound. We all existed at the same time, and sometimes were in the charts at the same time, but no one sounded just like they'd been stamped out.
But was there a sort of seeking and carving to try to make sure there was an individualism to the sound? And how did that, what was the process of that? And did it sometimes not work?
Oh yeah, for sure. Anything that didn't work, we never released or never actually.
But who decided it didn't work?
Well, we did.
Is that unique?
Well, John and I sort of look at ourselves as the arbiters of taste in certain things, but I'm sure Simon does in other ways too. I write lyrics sometimes. Yeah. Simon writes much better lyrics than me because he knows the criteria and his toolkit for actually doing that is so refined. He's written so many, and so it tends to fall into different divisions. Simon really does take care more of that, for example.
And then you had a number one fan, Princess Diana. I can remember buying at auction some LPs which belonged to her, which ended up being given back to William and Harry.
Right.
And there were Duran Duran albums with her Diana, round, squiggly schoolgirl signature on them. Did you come across her? Was she a part of? I mean, her imprimatur as a number one fan, did it make any difference at all? Or
well, we take anyone as a number one fan, but of course she was a great fan to have, and it was kind of her to make her views public. But we met her several times. She was at the View to a Kill, James Bond premiere that we did, and we played for a charity that her and, at the time, Prince Charles, now King Charles, they had a Prince's Trust. Yeah. We played at that, so we met her. And actually, I used to sometimes see her around in London, particularly in Chelsea, at different restaurants that we frequented.
And being in charge of a band, and you have been very, very key to the finances, the organisation, where it happens, and it's changing different formats, which we have to engage. Where do you go now with, because you've gone from the record shop right through to streaming, to Spotify. I think there are 15 million downloads a month with.
I don't know. I think the biggest change in music since we began was undoubtedly the internet, the advent of the internet, because suddenly, from having to hunt around in stores to find singles or CDs later, albums, everything was at the tip of your fingers, and just press a button wherever you are at any time of the night or day around the world. If you've got an internet connection, you're connected to all the music you can possibly consume. And that was really such a massive, massive change.
Because you were interested in finance. Did that make a big financial difference to the group?
Well, yeah, it was a catastrophe. At the beginning, when Napster came out, which was the first illegal downloading site, because then it wasn't really streaming. If you remember, everybody just used to download files and keep them in their own computer. And Napster found a way to do this and to steal music online.
Did you fight that? Or was it
well, it was very clever technology. I didn't see the point in fighting because it was obviously the future. The fact that it was illegal. It was like pirates until they get legalized. So my view was we need to find a system where people pay for music again, because it really isn't fair to musicians, and never mind artists like us. It was actually much more concerning for young artists who were coming out who wouldn't even get a chance to make their first or second albums because there wasn't anything, there was no way for them to earn money. So I thought that was really wrong. And so I had lots of talks with the record labels about it, about trying to police it and seeing what we could do. But then in the end, I said, ultimately, you're going the wrong route. You can't smash up some kid in Arkansas who's downloaded 15,000 tracks overnight and then say, right, we're going to take your house off you and we're going to sue you because you've broken the law. Instead, why don't you develop the technology? And why don't we find ways to do it? And I can't tell you how many endless discussions I had with heads of record labels, lots of people in the music industry about this. And in 1997, I pushed the button on the world's first download that was ever paid for. And it was a song called Electric Barbarella. The song subsequently got banned by a lot of people because the industry was horrified that we were selling something direct to consumers online. All the record stores banned our record because they didn't want to sell our things, saying, no, if you want to go directly, you do it. There was no PayPal or any...
Were you on your own with this? Was this quite pioneering? Was this...
Yeah, well, it was the first one.
Yeah.
It was Capitol Records. I found somebody at Capitol Records, a lady who was sympathetic to my views, and she allowed us to do it. And I think for them it was also an experiment because somebody had to do it to see what happened. Financially, it was a disaster because, of course, there was no micropayment systems online. There was no PayPal or any other system. It was just, okay, if you want to put your credit card online, you can get this for $1. A lot of people, as you can imagine, were rather resistant to that. So it didn't really sell many copies. And when it came back, the first thing I did was listen to it. Thought, what does it sound like? It sounded like a horribly compressed, tiny file that was really about the quality of a cassette.
Right.
So I didn't think that was particularly successful. But what was successful is we proved the point that you could sell a download online.
Right at the beginning, did you have predatory record managers or contracts? Or I mean, there's normally stories of the great rip-off.
Yeah.
What happened to you?
Nothing different.
Go on.
Well, when you sign your first contracts, one, you don't know anything about it. I was 16. I even had to have my father sign my contracts as I was a minor, were the very, very first ones. And then we were signed to EMI by the time I was 17 or 18. And the deals were absolutely dreadful. Of course they were, because they could get away with it and it had been traditional.
What did they take which they shouldn't have taken?
Almost everything. That's the way it works.
So
it's not,
if you had a number one single,
number one,
the money would
might
not
have been able to pay a gas bill. Of course, what was different then is that when you actually sold records, if you sold a lot of records, if you had something that was a massive worldwide hit, I don't know, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, that would have made a lot of money because it was physical product that actually sold and there was a margin on it. As soon as downloading, streaming all changed all of that and the economics were very different, that market really was almost nothing, and that's when touring went up.
And is that still the most lucrative part of
for all artists? I would say yes.
Do you think you're going to tour forever and ever and ever?
Well, I wouldn't have thought that we would have lasted more than maybe 2 to 8 years at the beginning. And I say that because the Sex Pistols had lasted 2 years and the Beatles had lasted about 8 years. And so we thought, well, if we get somewhere in the middle of that, we're doing really well. That's a career. But we've been lucky. We've worked hard and not really stopped because of our ambition and because we all enjoy what we're doing. But at the same time, you want to do things when you can do them well. Our touring at the moment, I think, is as good as it's ever been. So,
So
for,
it's-
for the foreseeable future.
So with the novelist Kaja Guru, his most lucrative novel is Never Let Me Go. Is there a particular song which for you is like for Thomas Hardy, Tess of the Dovevilles, for the one which actually...
I never think of things in terms of finances. I think of them in...
I'm told you're a rather sharp financier for the band in a
Well,
protective and long serving way.
I have to make sure we've got enough money to pay our bills, but I think talking about songs,
Yeah.
certainly don't think about money. Songs to me are sort of, they're like paintings. They're things that you make yourself. You make them by hand. Duran Duran is very handmade. We of course we use computers in the process now, but everything from the beginning was the five of us getting in a room and making it together. We didn't have armies of people around us helping us with different things as people do now. You know, the stylists and hairdressers and makeup artists and all kinds of other people that follow you around to do things. It was just us. At the beginning, when we had clothes, we couldn't afford a lot of clothing. We used to share things. You get to wear that shirt today. No, I want that tie, and that jacket will look better on you than on you. It was very much like that. And that stuck with us, that spirit of making these things. So songs, if you can hit on something with a song, and it's not so easy. If it was that easy, we'd be writing, Hungry Like the Wolf, An Ordinary World every day. You have to find the right combinations, and I think the criteria people often don't think about. You can't ever second judge the public, because you might write something you think is the greatest song ever and they don't like it.
And what was the song, or possibly the moment, when your very turbocharged optimism actually became a reality and you thought, wow, we are on our way to earning money, having a world tour, or even a national tour?
I think the Rio album
Yeah.
was really that period for us, because the first album we'd established ourselves with the song Planet Earth had become a hit in Australia and Japan and over a lot of Europe, but not America. And then Girls on Film became a bigger hit, and that started to open up more doors around the world. But it was the Rio album that followed shortly afterwards that had several big songs on it, and that's really what opened the gates.
It's said you don't dance. Is that
No.
true?
Mostly.
Yeah.
I think other people are so much better at it, is the truth. It's not, I love dancing, and I love watching people dance. But it was interesting because we just made a video some months ago for this new track we've done called Free to Love. And it's a real dance song, which we did with Nile Rodgers. And I'd had this idea about recreating Top of the Pops. So we got the master director, Jonas Ackerland, in to take care of everything. And the detail in it is rather wonderful, because he looked at every light and every flare and every camera move. And we made Top of the Pops in the studio, and we surrounded ourselves with dancers. And it was so much fun to do that. I thought, I don't remember Top of the Pops being quite this much fun when we did it, but actually there was some kind of strange nostalgia.
You never wear jeans.
No.
Have you ever worn jeans?
Black ones, kind of, but not things that have the wrong labels on it.
Yeah.
No. To me, it's laziness, jeans. I get it, and it's comfortable, and every other single person I know wears jeans.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know. I don't like the cut of me.
And eyeliner, makeup every day, just when you're going
It's
out?
on for you, Geordie.
I love it.
No, not every
No.
day, of course not.
Is it part of the habit of, if you're going out, you'll put it on?
I quite like the sort of the routine of it, I suppose, because I wore makeup so long on and off.
How long does it take?
10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it varies. Depends how good it is. But
I thought you were going to say, depends who it's for.
for sure. But I there's something I do quite like about the sort of the ritual of it. I can look in the mirror and go, oh, he looks tired. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Stick a bit of eyeliner on, you can hide it all.
And when I think of you, Andy Warhol, David Hockney, do blondes have more fun?
I've enjoyed my blondness. And it's quite good that people underestimate you too if you're blonde, I think. I'd always rather be the underdog. Andy Warhol, he was more silver, wasn't he, really? And actually, David Hockney, he had both, didn't he? Went blonde and then went more silver. Yeah. I quite liked the silver on him when he was really young with the big glasses. It was a great look. It's sad that David left us.
The effect of touring and life in the studio and the selfishness which an artist probably needs to have to achieve, not great for relationships generally.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one could equate my trajectory of quite a few different relationships to my working pattern, but I, each person has their own way of looking at relationships. Some people like to just settle down, be with one person, have a family.
Good for you.
Stay like that. Well, I started to do that when I was far too young, and I had my daughter, and then I moved on, and then sort of almost each decade it seemed that I changed. And it wasn't, I don't think, deliberate that I wanted to or felt that it was that time. Sometimes it was my partner that wanted to move on. Sometimes it was me that wanted to move on. But I don't regret it. At the moment, I'm very happy with my lovely partner, Alexandra.
Yeah. And your eye is always, I always think, dancing towards what you like in art, or what you see, or what you can change. Also, memorabilia from Duran Duran.
Yeah.
So
Well,
is that a big? It's a big collection.
yeah,
And
it is.
what are some of the sort of more unlikely things which have ended up in your shelves or drawers or?
It all started really when I was a kid, and my dad was a collector. He collected stamps, he collected coins, he collected beer mats, which I could never quite understand. But most bizarrely, he collected cheese labels. And this collection of cheese labels, which I still have, it's quite remarkable.
How many are there?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. But he's lined them all up so perfectly. We talk about OCD, really, just one after the other. And each one, I realised, he's even done them by the weight of the cheese and the colours. And there was something about it that was rather fabulous, because spending all that time and having the patience to concentrate on this thing. So when I started the band, he, of course, was quite proud when we were mentioned in a local newspaper or something. And he kept the article and he put it into a scrapbook. And he made these scrapbooks, which are pretty substantial. They're about that wide and about this thick, of which I think there ended up being around 40 of them, 40 or 60 even. Because he carried on, he never ever gave them up. So this went right from the late 70s all the way through into late 90s. And I think that really was at the heart of, we should keep things. And then one day, when I first met David Bowie, I was a bit tongue-tied and I didn't really know what to say to him. So it just came out of my mouth. I said, "What did you do with all those amazing clothes, with all those outfits?" He said, "Well, I've kept them. I have an archive, and we put them in to preserve them in the right." That makes sense. Now, we were just starting out, and my clothes were from rag markets or, a T-shirt from a little local store or something like that. But it did always stick with me that how great that those clothes exist and that he preserved them and that they didn't get wrecked and thrown away. And so I kept pretty much everything apart from a few things that were stolen.
So
clothes.
where do you in storage?
Yeah, we have special storage for
And how, I mean, David Hockney had a warehouse the size of about 9 buses.
No,
Yeah.
it's not that. It's not that. Maybe a few buses, but not 9. I think David Hockney created things at such a ridiculous rate. I used to try and buy clothes at that rate too, but yeah.
And then particularly unusual things? What sort of
Well,
clothes?
yeah, I've got lots of amazing clothes.
Go on, surprise
No,
me.
but things we were around at a time when clothing was as interesting as music.
I mean, are
in
these
the 80s.
jodhpurs or silk stockings?
Yeah.
Or, I mean,
Silk stockings, I don't know, that might be more your area than mine, Geordie. Yes, very early things. We had the first outfits. When we started, we really didn't have a budget, so I said, well, why don't we out Central St Martin's? So we came to London and we went to meet Central St Martin's and we gave them this job of, or challenge, I should say, of who would like to make some outfits for this young band from Birmingham. And we chose the winner and they made us all these clothes. So we've still got all of those and they're amazing. I don't know what actually happened to that designer, but so there's things like that. And then everything from Armani and Versace to Terry Mugler, Claude Montana, a lot of Anthony Price, Vivienne Westwood, Yohji Yamamoto, Comme des Garçons, Stephen Sprouse, you name it.
there's a lot of buses.
There's a lot of buses.
A lot of buses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it catalogued and do you ever go and see it?
Yeah, well, I don't sort of make
No, I don't mean a pilgrimage,
pilgrimages to go look through them, but we sometimes get requests for things, and at the moment we're hoping we're going to be able to do an exhibition with it because we get so many people ask, especially fashion students.
I can see the V&A being lined up for this.
I love the V&A, but you know, wherever, whatever, whoever would like it, it would be fun to do.
Nick, 17-year-old in their bedroom,
Yes.
in Birmingham,
Yeah.
in Hollywood,
Yeah.
the other Hollywood.
Yes.
What's your advice to them? Is it possible still to become a rock star if you dream?
I always think that you have to believe in dreams and you have to believe there's a way out to do things. We were driven by, as much as I love Birmingham, we were driven by getting out of there. But we wanted to get out of there because we wanted to see the rest of the world. We wanted to travel. I wanted to go to New York City. I wanted to look up at the buildings. We wanted to go to Los Angeles and see the swimming pools and all the beautiful girls there. We wanted to go to Chicago and see where Al Capone was strolling the streets. It was interesting. That was just America. But then we got to go to the Caribbean and we went to Australia and then we went to Japan, which was one of my favorites, still is. So it depends what you want and what you wish for. We did it as a band. We were like a little SAS SWAT team that went out on a mission to go to Tokyo and to win over the audiences, go to as many nightclubs as we could, do as much shopping as we could, meet some new people and get on a plane and go somewhere else. And yes, things have changed a little bit, but we're still a unit that tries to achieve things. So to your question, is it still possible with a band? Yes, I think it is, and I think the world needs bands because it's a very different thing. The tension you get within a band and pulling in different directions and the unusual results are things that you will never get as a solo artist. And the world has swung much more towards the universe of divas and highly produced songs that often sound somewhat similar to something else that you heard. There are still things out there that are original. There are going to be artists. There are artists coming up all the time, and they should be encouraged. People with ideas, people with new currency. That's what would excite me rather than someone who wants to be on a TV talent show and becomes famous around the world for a couple of years and then moves on. That I have very little interest.
Simon Cowell formula is not your idea.
It's not for me. I admire what they did and the way they did it. And when I was a kid, we used to have this program called Opportunity Knocks.
Huey Green.
Huey Green and the clapometer. It was really the same thing. It's just that it became much more sophisticated and the standard became higher and people were taken out of music schools. In America, a lot of those kids that became big stars came out of Disney. Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, all that generation, and a lot of the later ones. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not bashing it in any way. I'm just saying it's not my direction. I'm more interested in the kids that are sitting there with their friends, figuring out how to make something that is completely new.
But also, just to end with, what you brought to music, you brought it through the synthesizer. You brought it through the most unusual way when people think it's normally someone plucking a guitar or.
I started playing guitar.
Yeah, but you almost own this synthesizer as. But I can't think of someone who's more influential using that.
Well, a lot of people used synthesizers brilliantly before I came along. People like Giorgio Moroder, Brian Eno, and a lot of the prog rock bands used synthesizers. Pink Floyd, very much so. But my view on it was how to blend it with pop. It was how do we make a record that's got rock guitar with electronic pulses and beautiful layers. I treat synthesizers like I treat an orchestra. I can play any of those instruments. I want it to be a bit more like a flute. I want it to be a bit more like a big bass drum. I want it to be like a violin. I can sort of make those textures, and I build up that arrangement within the songs, which I think hadn't probably been done much with rock music before. I'm sure there's plenty of examples, but that's really where it came from. But what was great about having a synthesizer was that it was an open book. Guitars that had been thousands of great guitarists, but with synthesizers, most synth players are fairly shy. They sit there and figure out their things, and we're all complete geeks, really, fiddling with these different knobs and trying to make everything work. But yeah, a lot of younger kids have come up to me who have synths and things saying, well, it was because we saw you with this thing called the Fairlight on stage, which was the first sort of digital sampling keyboard. That's how we got into music. And if you had a little tiny little bit of influence on kids that got them into something that's given them a good life, that's great.
Well, thank goodness for Hollywood, your Hollywood.
Yes.
We wouldn't have had the combination, the friends, the talent, which combined to make Duran Duran, which has dominated the 80s, dominated the 90s, and here we are in 2026 with it still packed out concerts, Grammys, Brits, Hollywood Hall of Fames, but most resounding of all, how you created the imagination to capture style, substance, music, and sound to create something very unique, Duran Duran. Nick, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you, Geordie.